My name is Anna. For as long as I can remember, I've loved routine. Not in a boring way, I don't think. It's more like feeling safe. Knowing what comes next feels good, like a warm blanket on a cool evening. My days usually followed a simple pattern. Wake up, breakfast, walk to my job at the town library. I love the quiet smell of old books. Work my shift helping people find stories, then walk home. The walk home was always the best part, though, because usually Ben was there. Ben was my best friend. We had known each other since kindergarten, when he shared his crayons with me because I'd dropped mine and they rolled under the teacher's desk. We didn't become best friends instantly. It grew slowly, comfortably, like a tree. By the time we were older, it felt like he'd always been there. He just understood things without me needing to explain too much. He knew I liked the window, seat at the cafe, that I hated loud surprises, and that rainy days made me feel thoughtful, not sad. Our routines were often linked. He worked part-time at the bakery just down the street from the library. Most days, our shifts ended around the same time. I'd step out into the afternoon sun, blinking a little after the library's soft light, and he'd be waiting near the big oak tree on the corner, maybe holding a slightly misshapen cookie he'd saved for me. Our walk home wasn't the fastest route. We took the path through Miller Park. It was longer, quieter. We'd talk about everything and nothing. Funny things customers said, a book I was reading, his latest attempt at baking something complicated, plans for the weekend. Sometimes we walked in comfortable silence, just listening to the birds or the distant sound of traffic. It never felt awkward. It felt like breathing. Saturdays were different, but still a routine. We always met at the same wooden bench near the duck pond in the park. Rain or shine. We called it our bench. We'd sit there for an hour, maybe two, just talking. It was our time to catch up properly, away from work or family. We'd watch the ducks, share snacks, and make plans that often just involved finding another quiet spot to hang out. It sounds simple, I know. But that simplicity, that predictability with Ben, was the steadiest part of my life. It made me feel grounded. I valued it more than I probably realized. I suppose I just thought it would always be like that. Why wouldn't it be? Then came a Tuesday. It started like any other Tuesday. Library work, sorting books, the familiar quiet hum. The sun was warm when I left, and Ben was waiting by the oak tree, just like always. He didn't have a cookie today, though. He just smiled, but it seemed a little off. Quieter than usual. We started our walk through Miller Park. I talked about a funny old history book I'd found full of strange facts. Ben listened, nodded, but didn't add his usual witty comments. The silence between us felt different today. Not comfortable, but heavy. I stopped talking, wondering if something was wrong. Did he have a bad day at the bakery? Was he worried about something? We reached our usual halfway point, a small wooden bridge over a slow-moving stream. We often stopped there for a minute. Ben leaned on the railing, looking down at the water. I stood beside him, waiting. "Anna," he said finally, his voice soft. He didn't look at me. "Something's happening. My family. We're moving." I blinked. Moving? Like, to a new house across town? That happened sometimes. People found bigger places. It was a bit disruptive, but not world-ending. He finally turned to look at me, and his eyes were serious, sad. "No, not across town. Far away, to a different city. My dad got a new job there, a really big one." The words hung in the air. Far away. Different city. My mind tried to make sense of it. It felt like trying to read a sentence where all the letters were jumbled. Ben? Leaving? Not waiting by the oak tree? No more walks through the park? No more Saturdays on our bench? It didn't compute. It couldn't be real. Move away? I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Like, permanently? He nodded slowly. Yeah. We leave at the end of next month. End of next month. That was only weeks away. Suddenly the warm sun felt cold. The familiar park, the quiet stream, the steady rhythm of my life. It all seemed to tilt sideways. My heart felt heavy, like a stone had suddenly appeared in my chest. Ben, my constant, my friend who left, was actually leaving. And I had no idea what that meant for me, for us, for everything that felt so normal just moments ago. The routine was broken. The days after Ben told me his news felt strange, like walking through fog. Everything looked the same. The library, the streets, Miller Park. But nothing felt the same. A layer of sadness coated everything. Thin, but always there. I went to work, I sorted books, I helped people, but my mind kept replaying his words. Far away. End of next month. It felt unreal, yet painfully certain. I tried hard to act normal around Ben. What else could I do? Getting upset wouldn't stop his family from moving. It wouldn't change his dad's job offer. It felt selfish to burden him with my sadness when he was probably dealing with his own mix of excitement and worry about starting over somewhere new. So, when he met me by the oak tree after work, I tried to smile like always. When we walked through the park, I tried to talk about normal things. But it was different. The silences were longer. Sometimes I'd start to tell him something funny that happened at the library, and then I'd stop, thinking, soon, I won't be able to just tell him this tomorrow. Every shared laugh felt precious, like we were spending a currency that was quickly running out. Our routine, once a source of comfort, now felt like a countdown. Each walk home, each Saturday on our bench, was one less we had left. One afternoon, walking near the stream, Ben tried to sound cheerful. Hey, it won't be that bad, you know, he said, kicking a loose stone off the path. We have phones, video calls. We can still talk all the time. It'll be like I'm still here almost. I nodded, forcing a smile. Yeah, of course. Technology is amazing, I managed to say. Inside, though, my heart felt heavy. It wouldn't be the same. Video calls weren't the same as walking side by side in comfortable silence. Sending a message wasn't the same as sharing a cookie under the oak tree or watching the ducks together on our bench without needing words. I knew he was trying to make me feel better, maybe himself too, but the logic didn't soothe the feeling of loss. I couldn't explain that without sounding childish or ungrateful, so I just stayed quiet, looking at the ripples in the water. As the weeks passed, the reality of the move became more visible. Walking past Ben's house on my way home, from the library one evening, a slightly different route I sometimes took, I saw stacks of brown cardboard boxes through the living room window. Lights were on late, and I could see his parents moving around looking busy and tired. It was really happening. The abstract idea of moving suddenly had physical proof. Boxes waiting to be filled, a house preparing to be emptied. Seeing those boxes made the knot in my stomach tighten. I found myself avoiding that street afterwards. I also started to avoid talking about the future, even the near future. When Ben mentioned a movie coming out in a couple of months that we would have normally planned to see together, I just mumbled something non-committal and changed the subject. Talking about plans we couldn't share felt like poking a bruise. Ben seemed to understand. He didn't push. Maybe he felt the same awkwardness, the same sadness lurking beneath the surface. Our conversations became lighter, focused only on the present moment, but that felt fragile too. Every "see you tomorrow" exchanged at the end of our walk felt heavier. Tomorrow kept coming, but the end of the month was getting closer and closer. 3 weeks left, then 2, then just 1. Each passing day felt like a page turning in a book I didn't want to finish. The countdown was almost over, and the weight of the final goodbye pressed down, making it harder to breathe normally. I knew the last day was coming, the day our routine would break completely, and I wasn't ready. The final Saturday arrived much too quickly, heavy and gray like the clouds gathering overhead. It felt fitting somehow. This was it. The last time we would meet at our bench by the duck pond. The walk there felt different today. Usually, I felt light anticipation, ready to share the week's small stories. Today, my steps felt slow, deliberate, each one bringing me closer to the goodbye I dreaded. Ben was already there when I arrived, sitting on the familiar wooden slats, hands resting on his knees. He looked up as I approached, offering a small, sad smile that I tried to return. I sat down beside him, leaving a little more space between us than usual. The air felt thick with things unsaid. We didn't greet each other with our usual easy chatter. We just sat, watching the ducks glide across the murky water, their occasional quacks sounding unnaturally loud in the quiet. Minutes passed in silence. I wanted to say something meaningful, something that captured years of friendship, shared jokes, and quiet understanding, but the words wouldn't form. All I felt was a growing tightness in my throat, a painful lump that made breathing feel shallow. How could I possibly summarize everything? How could I let him go? My mind raced with questions. Will he forget me? Will he make new best friends immediately? How will I handle the empty space he leaves behind? It felt overwhelming, the future stretching out like a long, empty road. I focused on breathing, trying to stay calm, trying to be rational. This was hard, yes, but it was happening. Getting overly emotional wouldn't help either of us. Still, I couldn't stop the sting behind my eyes. I blinked hard, determined not to cry yet. Finally, Ben broke the silence. "Well," he sighed, turning slightly towards me. "This feels weird, doesn't it?" "Yeah," I whispered, the single word catching in my throat. "Really weird." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled something out. He held it in his closed hand for a moment before opening his palm. Lying there was a small, smooth, gray stone, like one you might find on a beach. It wasn't fancy, just an ordinary stone, but it had a tiny, almost perfect hole near one edge, like it was meant to be put on a string. "I found this near the stream on the bridge the other day," he said quietly, holding it out to me. "I know, it's not much, but it made me think of all our walks, our quiet spots. Thought maybe you could keep it, to remember the good times." I looked from the stone to his face. His expression was earnest, a little pained. He wasn't trying to brush off the sadness with false cheerfulness anymore. He was acknowledging it, sharing it. He knew this was hard for me, for him too. "I'll miss you a lot, Anna," he added, his voice soft but clear. Really. His simple honesty, it was the turning point. Hearing him say it, seeing the genuine sadness in his eyes that mirrored my own, somehow released the pressure inside me. Tears welled up, and this time I didn't fight them. They weren't just tears of loss, though. Suddenly, I understood. The reason this hurt so much was because the friendship was real. It was deep and important. The sadness wasn't just about him leaving. It was proof of how much our connection mattered. It wasn't just about losing something. It was about having had something precious enough to miss this badly. I carefully took the stone from his hand. Its surface was cool and smooth against my fingers. "Thank you, Ben," I managed, my voice thick with emotion. A few tears escaped and rolled down my cheeks. "It's perfect. I'll keep it safe." I looked at him directly, meeting his gaze. "I'll miss you too, so much." We sat there for a few more minutes, the silence returning, but it felt different now. Less heavy, more like a shared understanding. The unspoken things felt spoken, somehow, through the tears and the simple gift. Then, Ben stood up. "The moving. Truck comes really early tomorrow," he said gently. "I should probably go. Help with the last bits." I nodded, standing up too. There were no more words left. We just looked at each other for a long moment. Then, he gave me a quick, awkward hug, the kind where you're not sure how tight to squeeze or how long to hold on. It lasted only a second, but it felt important. "Bye, Anna," he said softly. "Bye, Ben," I replied, my voice steadier now. Then, he turned and walked away, down the path leading out of the park. I watched him go until he disappeared around a bend. I stood there alone, the smooth stone clutched tightly in my hand, the familiar bench suddenly feeling very empty beside me. The rain had held off, but the gray sky seemed to press down. The hardest part was over, but a new, uncertain chapter was just beginning. The next day was Sunday. When I woke up, the first thought that hit me was, he's gone. The house felt too quiet. Usually, even on a Sunday, there was the possibility of bumping into Ben later, maybe a spontaneous plan to grab ice cream or just wander around town. Now that possibility was gone, replaced by a definite absence. It felt like a missing step on a familiar staircase, jarring and unsettling. Monday felt even stranger. Walking to the library felt normal enough, but the walk home was profoundly different. As I approached the corner with the big oak tree, my steps automatically slowed, my eyes searching for him out of habit. Seeing the empty space where he usually waited sent a pang of sadness through me, sharp and sudden. I continued, walking, taking the familiar path through Miller Park alone. The silence wasn't comfortable anymore. It was just empty. The birds sang, the stream flowed, but the easy conversation, the shared presence that made the walk special, was missing. It was just a walk now, functional but lacking its heart. At work, I tried to focus on the books, on the people needing help. It was a good distraction, but the underlying sadness remained. I found myself glancing at the clock more often, not with anticipation, but with a kind of quiet dread for the lonely walk home. I knew this was part of the process. Logically, I understood that feeling sad was okay, even necessary. It was the price of having cared so much. I didn't try to push the feeling away entirely, but I also didn't let it paralyze me. I still did my job, I still went through my routines, but they felt altered, like a song played in a minor key. A few, Days later, maybe a week after Ben left, I found myself near the park bench again. I hadn't planned to go there, but my feet seemed to lead me that way. I hesitated. Sitting there alone felt like highlighting the emptiness. But then I remembered the stone in my pocket. I'd carried it with me since Ben gave it to me. I took it out, its smooth surface cool against my palm. I sat down on the bench, our bench, and just held the stone, looking out at the ducks. It didn't magically make the sadness disappear. But holding the stone, focusing on its simple reality, helped ground me. It wasn't just an empty bench. It was a place filled with memories. Good memories. I thought about all the conversations we'd had there, the laughter, the shared snacks, the comfortable silences. The stone felt like a link to those moments, a reminder that they had happened, that they were real. Ben was gone from this bench, yes, but the friendship, the history we built here, wasn't erased. About 2 weeks after he'd left, a postcard arrived in the mail. It showed a picture of a busy city street, very different from our quiet town. On the back, in Ben's familiar handwriting, it said, "Hi, Anna. Settling in is crazy, but okay. This city is loud. Found a park, but it doesn't have ducks like Miller Park. Thinking of you. Ben." It was simple, just a few lines, but seeing his writing, reading his words, felt like a small light turning on. He kept his promise. He hadn't forgotten. He was thinking of me, even amidst the chaos of starting a new life far away. I read the postcard several times, a small smile finally touching my lips. It wasn't the same as him being here, not even close. But it was something. It was a connection. I placed the postcard on my desk next to the smooth gray stone. Looking at them together, I started to understand. Things had changed drastically. My routine was broken, and the comfortable predictability I loved was gone, at least in the way it used to be. It was okay to be sad about that. But change didn't mean ending. It meant transforming. I started walking home a different way sometimes, exploring streets I didn't usually take. It wasn't the same as walking with Ben, but it was new, a small step towards building a different routine. I still felt a pang of sadness when I passed the oak tree or the park bench, but it lessened over time, slowly replaced by a quiet warmth when I thought of our memories. That evening, I took out a piece of paper and started writing a letter back. To Ben, telling him about the library, about a funny thing that happened, asking him more about the loud city. I learned something important during those weeks. Change is hard, especially when it means saying goodbye to someone important. It hurts. But friendships, the really good ones, don't just disappear because of distance. They change shape. They require more effort, maybe through letters or calls instead of shared walks. But the connection can still be there, strong and real. It was different now, yes. Our friendship wasn't gone. It just lived in a new way. And somehow knowing that, holding the stone in my hand, I felt that was okay. It truly was.